Guys, hi. It's 2 p.m. So I think we can move forward. We have Hi, Honorata. We have one more presentation to go. So guys, last but definitely not least, I would like to introduce you Honorata Hencel, Global Navigation Services Senior Manager for Boeing Gdansk office. She oversees around 300 employees responsible for providing the airlines and avionics producers with navigation updates for Europe, Middle East, Canada, South and Central America. And in her presentation, she will show you the view on the past and present working environment in aviation and the importance of women in building up the expertise of the industry. Honorata, please take it away.
Thank you so much for the lovely introduction. So I hope you can hear me well. You don't need to unmute me. Can you hear me?
We can hear you, yeah.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you for all the comments. So I'll share my screen. And actually, let's see if we're going to be okay to overcome some technical difficulties today. I hope you can see my second. Starting. All right, so just give me a moment. All right, so I'll start talking about myself. The easiest way to fill in time is to talk about yourself. So there's some of you on the line who know me already. Some of you actually do not know me. For starters, and I see there's going to be a little delay with the slide switch, so apologies for that. I can already see the next slide, and you can't apparently. Cool. Okay, it's 7 seconds delay. I'll count for that. So I think that it's important to understand who the presenter is. And guess what? I'm the only woman that's presenting during this conference. And we just figured out that by covering this conference, we were also filling in some cliche that aviation is actually an industry dominated by males. And we are trying to actually prove that wrong, because a majority of the organizers of the conference actually are women and are fantastic women. We're just behind the scenes, right? So I decided to show you that there is a lot of women in aviation, but I'm not only going to talk about it because I was afraid we would scare out some men from the audience. I want to also talk about the labor market, and I want to talk actually how current conditions might influence what's happening in the labor market. But coming back to me, most of you who don't know me, it is true. I oversee a fantastic, huge department of global services that actually just changed the name to Global Data Management. I'm overly passionate for aviation, and actually, I proved because aviation being my passion. I used to work in a different sector, in financial, and then I decided of aviation so much I want to make it my job. And was it easy for me? I think it was fairly easy for me. I think that most women in the market have it that easy as I had it. Basically, I started self-educating and I started attending the industry events. I started talking to people that are in aviation, and I started learning massively. I also took a course in London and I took some certification for Virgin Atlantic, where I met a lot of people that actually were also taking on some various industry roles, and that's what enabled me to understand better the aviation world. I joined Boeing 5 years ago, and actually I felt intimidated to be talking to pilots that also work for us, like Jakub, for example, whom you met today. But in time, I understood that every day I have to learn, and by that, I'm gonna get to know the industry better. As for navigation, as you know, I serve that role. That's easier because actually my father, he's a navigation officer, so that aspect was present in my life, all the way. And my grandfather actually was a pilot in the Second World War, so I guess that I also have some, good legacy in the family for that aspect. What we do, I think that Szymon and Jakub also described today how we manage the navigation data. But I think that it's important to say that the way I work and the way my team works, we are very much close to the customer. And the major airlines that I had the pleasure to work with over the last 5 years were Air Canada, Qatar, Norwegian, Turkish Airlines, or H1 Airlines, or Air China, or Air China Eastern, Air China Southern. I'll tell you why I'm mentioning those names in a minute. Ryanair, actually the ones that I'm displaying are the ones that in constant sort of communication with us as to their requests, their needs when it comes to operating a healthy and actually timely business when it comes to services. I also lead several additional initiatives that have an aim to actually encourage people to develop the aviation knowledge, I think in the same manner as I did. And actually, a picture where I have a hat is the one where I was not working in aviation, but my team, my previous team, actually knew that I'm so passionate about it. They had like this, and they started calling me a captain. A previous job, and working in the domain. So I always say the dreams come true. And for those of you who know me, I'm passionate and have a little picture. I'm not sure, I can't see it, but most of the time I feel either like I'm swimming or flying in my life, passionate about stuff. So I hope that you're gonna feel like it most of your careers and most of your time. So enough about me. So let's talk maybe about the business in which we operate. And I'm so happy that all the presenters today actually were talking about all the stuff I wanted to mention, because you did a great job for me. I don't have to talk about it anymore. But I think just for the guys that don't know our business so well, as a sort of reminder, I work for Boeing company. That Boeing, as you might know, acquired Jeppesen company in 2007. The Polish branch of Jeppesen was created, and it's all about delivering service pilots, producers, and to various customers. But what is important that Boeing acquired companies that are called digital solutions and analytics, currently under sort of one umbrella, and we are delivering services of aircraft movement, also crew movement from air to the ground, again to the air, as well as we are servicing everything that happens pre-flight, during the flight, and post-flight, right? So you'll see various engines that actually help to optimize the flight efficiency, the crew allocation efficiency, as well as obviously could help predict and moderate the conditions of the flight. And I think that we spoke a lot about various aspects of that the previous presentation. I know that even I do work only for niche, I had a chance to also work with different portfolios, and actually two aspects of the job that I didn't have in my previous companies. One is that I work very closely with the customer, and I think that distance in aviation is actually smaller than in other businesses. The second aspect is that actually we have to very much work with the technology teams to understand what are the requirements of the user of our product. So I think those two aspects are significant. And if you work in aviation, I think it's important that you realize other businesses don't have that aspect. Why is it important? It's important because actually I'm going to be talking about becoming an expert for the business and within that aviation market. And those two aspects are important because you have to have a brain that actually comprehends the expertise needed for that operation in that market. So I think this is important. And you also have to understand how the customer looks at the world when you're like delivering stuff for him. So
Honorata,
I think that
me.
Everyone.
Pardon me. Sorry for 1 second, but as much as it's really lovely to see you, but I think you're breaking a little bit. And if you could turn off your camera, I think that would help a little bit. Sorry.
No worries. How about now? Is it better?
It seems better. Yeah, thank you.
I can also put my headphones on if you want to. Or is
No,
it
right.
better now?
It seems like we can hear you better now.
Perfect. Pictures of me, that's enough. So good. Okay, so again, I think that we were trying very much, I think, with all the presentation during this conference, not to get into this dooms mood, like, you know, the sad mood about what's happening in the world, but we cannot escape it. And I think I really love the way everybody tackled the current COVID environment when it comes to what's happening in the market. And I decided I really carefully reviewed everything that IATA was showing us for the last few months. And I decided to just show you some data that I think the best illustrate the current landscape that we operate in. And I'm going to add a few data points in there for your understanding. And some of them actually are very, very actual. So first of all, as you see in the slide, obviously, there was a big collapse when it comes to the load factors for the passengers and cargo operations. And obviously, you might have heard, I think even Rafał and DJ were talking about it, like how airlines started to reshuffle their activities into different areas of operation. So we can see how the cargo factors actually started to rise up. And this started to happen actually heavily in May, and how unfortunately the passenger factor landed. However, we see that there is a major sort of uprise since August. I think also the holiday season contributed to that, though obviously the load factors remain low, and also with the current sort of trends of the COVID uprise, this is also a big challenge for all operators to stay afloat. I think it was DJ who was saying this morning about the fact that airlines are burning cash very fast, and this is why airlines need to be operating on certain load factors to ensure that their financial heads above the water. I have some new data for you here from today. We're gonna here before we I'm going to be talking to the next slide. Just wanted to let you know that actually, as by the new about the sort of best performing markets that we currently have in the world, those are Northeast Asia. And when it comes to number of passengers flying, like in the last 6 weeks, Northeast Asia, then North America, and it's mostly domestic, as you can imagine. Western Europe as well. Then we have Southeast Asia and Southern Asia. So this is where we see the biggest capacity being filled in for the airline operators, as well as just basically the biggest number of passengers flying. And I think that the airlines that currently are the most in demand reflect those regions. So the first one is Delta. So actually, the American carrier is the most used sort of airline right now in terms of passengers carried. Then we have China Southern, and I mentioned Air China used to be like this flagship carrier for the Chinese country, and then China Southern is becoming bigger and bigger. Then we have Southwest, and I'm not sure if you all know, but actually the same investor that is investing in Southwest also invested in Wizz, so that's an interesting fact. And then we have Ryanair, and then we have Eastern China Airlines. And we have Ryanair. So I was thinking we're going to be talking about airports, Gdansk airport as well. So from the carriers that we know that operate here in the region, Ryanair is on the 8th place. And Ryanair, unfortunately, also records some decreases in the passengers carried numbers. and those are of about 27% at the moment for the last six weeks. And then something interesting again, when we are thinking about our sort of regional landscape, I saw a list of airlines that actually are sort of increasing their load factors and passengers carried since May or June, and the top one is Wizz Air. So actually, Wizz Air, we know it, we know Wizz Air very well, operating here from Gdansk as well, and also Mateusz gave us, I think, a good overview of the operations there. So Wizz Air actually doubled the number of passengers carried in the last 5 months, but two other low-cost carriers which show how volatile the market is. EasyJet actually dropped by 40% in the last 5 months, and Ryanair actually also, as I mentioned, by 23 to 27%. So as you can see, the market demanding. There is, sort of a hope as we saw it, and I think that this hope and confidence is shown on this slide. You can see that basically starting April, we started seeing some sort of increase in terms of like passengers. What we need is the confidence from individual customers as well as from the businesses that airline operations are. And I think I heard today that there's a very little risk of like getting infected on the plane, but just for you to understand that this is the current landscape, and I'm mentioning it before because it very largely also affects the working market. So enough of the COVID stuff. Just wanna sort of show you the market we're gonna be operating in, and then share some more details about the working market. So when it comes to the market itself, I'm not sure if you are aware, but apart from COVID, which is a big part, of course, of every discussion, there are also some companies that are currently competing with us when it comes to talent and also solutions. And I'm also showing this because we all think that to work in the aviation industry, it means that you have to really sort of be very narrowly specialized for aviation. It is not true. And I think that also with this conference, we are proving that actually technology knowledge, it's a broad sort of statement, but technology knowledge is very important when it comes to the business, when it comes to digitalization of data and connectivity. We have various groups that actually do compete with us. And just for you to understand the current environment, basically, we have, of course, a group of like top companies producing aircraft. So this is the environment we operate in. So we have like Asian competition here, Embraer, which used to be in joint venture with Boeing, but this was dropped, and Bombardier, which is also in a sort of, I'm not sure if this is a joint venture, but some sort of cooperation with Airbus. Then we have a group of companies that service and supply the planes, and those are mostly avionics producers. And I think that the best, the most well-known, Honeywell being like the one also that we partner with. So it's a competitor, but also a partner in those discussions. Of course, defense companies, especially in the US, that's a major aspect when it comes to the competitive environment. And the ones that are that seem the most unlikely to be direct competitor in aviation, but they are still in the market, like SpaceX, Blue Origin, Amazon, Google, or other high-tech companies. So these also will define the market, but also talent is flowing across the aviation companies. So and that is the sort of map. I think, okay, it came up. There is a map of companies, how we are all connected when it comes to aviation companies, various countries, and various powers in the world. So you can see that competition from high-tech companies from Southeast Asia and players like Comac, for example. But also, as I mentioned, those disruptive companies, they come to place. And of course, there's this little virus thing that is affecting all of the powers. However, I believe that regardless of the situation, actually the sort of split of powers in the world will remain, meaning that there is a bigger investment and stress put out in the Asian markets currently, and they are the most sort of disruptive power when it comes also to aviation market. So I promised to talk about the job market, and I promised to talk about women in those jobs. So first of all, I think it's important to understand what sort of jobs do we have in the market, and I'm trying to sort of run away from the cliche of a pilot and stewardess when I talk to most of my friends who are not in aviation, and I think you might have heard that. And when I looked up aviation in demand careers, and actually at the same time when I was preparing the presentation, there was a sort of Boeing report, official Boeing report coming up. So it's great. We have some sort of backup data in there also coming from my company. I figured that actually it's not the crew we need crew. That's like beyond any discussion here. But the people who are really important currently are the ones that match the description that other presenters were giving us. So Sean and DJ were talking about connectivity a lot. So I think that that's super important when it comes actually to creating that sort of capability for aircrafts to be connected in the air. And without actually aero IT specialists, that's not possible to achieve, as well as engineers that could help modify the avionics as such. And I just read that actually for the aero IT specialists, there was an official regulatory certification created. So you can get a pilot's license, but you can still also get an aero IT specialist license. So that's very interesting, I think. And actually, expected that this role should actually be in demand to an extent of becoming from 12 to 20% of the aviation-related jobs. And I think it's, especially for this forum, it sounds very valid when we think about, all the data and all the aspects of connectivity that could be utilized for airline operators. I started like from the bottom. I'm going to go back to the top. So obviously, airline pilot is always in demand. It's also connected to obvious challenges of crew rostering, the long path of developing into the role. Also, because of the strict regulations, I believe, of labor market when it comes to working hours. I think that this is also this aspect of rostering that's a nightmare, how to like make sure that there is a good map of available hours available for each airline for specific, of course, aircraft types and specific other sort of licensing aspects. Aviation maintenance technician, this one is interesting, and it's changed the way we are looking at this one. So when you think about maintenance of airplanes, you think that this is something that has to happen like frequently, pretty fast, without allowing the machine to stay on the ground for too long, because aircrafts have to be in the air to make money. But interesting aspect when it comes to COVID is that this area is really important right now, as there's a lot of grounded planes. So while they are actually grounded, they have to undergo frequent mechanical checks to ensure that they will be ready to operate when the times. Actually, there is an increased need for these roles, as the roles that were put in there in place were not like the capacity within those roles would not calculated for so many machines staying on the ground in the same time. So you can imagine that actually airlines are just trying to ensure their most valuable assets are actually in good condition for the future operations. So this is very interesting, I think. Then I'm going to come back to airline pilot. I'm going to show you in a minute a report of how many pilots are in demand and will be in demand in the next 20 years. And I understand the climate we are in right now, but this long-term forecast actually does embed the impact of COVID in that estimation. So I think it's pretty interesting. Then aviation safety inspector. So I would say that especially given the recent events, for example, that unfortunately were part of the Boeing operation here, this is an important role that will always play a super big role in terms of like airline operations, and will always be needed from the regulatory aspect. So no airline operation can actually exist when it comes to when it's not certified. And I think that those roles not only can exist when it comes to like regulators like or FAA, EASA, or other, but they can also exist as sort of internal safety inspectors that work within airlines. So that's an important one. And then certified flight instructors. And I also gonna take it a little bit Boeing personnel here. So basically, with various problems we've been facing also with 737 MAX, there's been a call for more intense flight instructions and more intense flight tests, and that requires actually certified flight instructors, and there is also a certain deficiency of those. So this role is also in demand. So whether you want to work as a airline pilot or you want to work as a flight instructor, I think you can be both potentially, but this is an important sector. So when it comes to the outlook, this is really fresh, and it's been created by Boeing just to show demand of the personnel. So overall, the total staff that's going to be needed in the next actually 20 years, so 10 years from now, but we're looking in 20 years. So there is a demand to add 2 million new personnel in commercial airlines domain, as well as over 300,000 in new personnel for business and GA market. So I think that's pretty a lot. There's also a demand for us to have almost the equal amount of pilots as technicians, and almost 1 million cabin crew members. So as you can imagine, those numbers are yet to be met. And as the aviation industry requires prolonged education and certification to be in certain roles, I think it's important that we start now. So if any of you is not in the business and you'd like to be, and you're thinking about your new career, I think now is the time to make a sort of decisive point in your life and decide whether you can match one of the diverse roles that are needed in aviation. About women in aviation, so where are they? So of course, the cliche is that women mostly serve as crew, and I think this is like the picture that probably comes to everybody's mind. And I can tell you that that cliche, well, women have been challenged with that, I think, ever since they started flying. And I'm going to tell you like when they started flying. But it is true that, you know, most people would envision women being stewardesses, and various aspects of that cliche that also impact how the market looks like. So I can only share with you maybe some details there. That basically, it's true that there is some misrepresentation of women in aviation. In 1950, when it comes to the working in them, it was about 27% of women that were working in aviation, like in all roles that were connected with aviation. And currently, those numbers represent around 40%. So it's not a big rise. It's just that the profile of those roles that women occupy just changed. So that's the big difference. And that 40 something percent comes from 2018. That was the last sort of number when came out. Yeah, Nazina is saying, yeah, there's a sexist view. Well, it is. But yeah, we're just also having that presentation trying to change that. So when it comes to air traffic controllers, a very demanding role, I think it was in the top 10 when it comes to the most demanded jobs in aviation. So it didn't make the top 5, but it's in top 10. So for FAA, for US market, when it comes to the women controllers, it's only 17% of women that serve in air traffic control. I would be interested to hear how many do we have in the tower in ATC in Gdansk, but I don't know if we can disclose that. Maybe a question for tomorrow. I know that actually ATC is not governed by Gdansk Airport itself, but maybe the colleagues can tell us that secret. When it comes to commercial aviation and women pilots, it's only a range of 5.5% of women pilots in commercial aviation. And this one funny aspect when it comes to women CEOs and like chief operating officers or chief financial officers. So this is only from range of 3% to 8%. So basically, the more demanding job, the less women we're gonna see there. And I will be talking why, but I have to say that those numbers are so aircraft maintenance and those roles that I'm about that are so important to like make sure that the aircrafts are in shape to operate. This is around also 16-18% of women. Excuse me?
Honorata, we had the small difficulties hearing you for the last minute, maybe.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you didn't hear me?
Just maybe 2-3 last sentences when you started from 3 to 8% in women in the CEO position.
Okay, so just last thing was that women in maintenance, aircraft maintenance, that's around 16 to 18%. So again, I mentioned top demand jobs, right? And that's like not even 1/5 of the position held by women, all right? So this is very cliche. And I'm gonna see a picture, and I think it's gonna be controversial. But for this country, from our sort of vow taken days ago. And this picture struck me as I was like going through the news because I noticed there's only one woman in this picture. It's hardly to like recognize who is who because of the masks and the colors of the suits. But there's only one woman here. And basically, I just realized that, well, it's not just about aviation and the problems of like diversity and inclusion. And I put here inclusion specifically as you allow also women representatives to keep like to hold high section. As I was preparing for this presentation, I just figured that, hey, this is like similar to aviation. Like when you get to the top, you have to just basically really like look up for that inclusion for women representatives. But it's not something that cannot be changed. From this is like, you can't see, it's gonna come up soon. It's here. You can see that actually the number of women pilots has been rising anywhere, and this includes commercial and also business and general aviation pilots. So basically, as you see, there's a lot of students that also contributed to that number. In general, obviously the commercial sector is the hardest one for women to get into, but still, at least there's a lot of education. As we are talking about the students, it's basically important that women at least get to be certified as pilots, and they are allowed to take on very responsible jobs in commercial aviation. So as mentioned, there is a sort of small percent of women, but there's a lot of activities coming from various airlines. Recently I saw, to encourage even some crew members like the stewardesses to join the flight schools. I saw a very nice campaign from Visa recently, where they are also promoting like education for young women to actually get a female license, if not a female license, pilot license, dedicated for talented females. So I think it's changing, but of course those percentages, you need something bigger to keep them moving. And a global view, just it's from 2018, so you would understand like which airlines have the biggest percentage of women in their operations. So as you can see, as a familiar airline operating here, Lufthansa, 7%, and that of course includes captains, first officers. But it's a diverse group. We have even some low-cost carriers here, or charter carriers. Operations include stewardesses. I mean, here it's about pilots, but yeah, I would say that crew, when you say crew, it's both pilots and stewardesses. But as you see it here, it shows 5.18%. Some other source that I researched was talking about 5.6% of women in overall pilots globally. So still not very impressive number, and I hope that more airlines will take on some initiatives, like for example Visa is doing, to encourage the younger generations to fill in that gap. And just remember, I was showing you that there's huge demand for pilots in the next 20 years. So actually, it's not that men will fill in all those gaps. We also need the women. So that's why it's so important. The next slide is coming up. And I just figured I'm going to show you some talented women that I met and I worked with that are represent, I think, trending jobs in aviation. And I have the pleasure to work with Paulina, who is a Scrum Master in software development. And actually, I think that she represents what's the best in terms of like future requirements for the industry, because she's deeply connected with the technology and also how various portfolios can work together, ensuring overall efficiencies for the airline. So I find it super important. One thing that our customers always tell us is that they don't need several solutions for their operations. They'd like to have an integrated one. And I think the work that, for example, here Paulina is doing with the technology teams also enables that aspect. I'm working with Marilena Gemalto from Italy, and she's a supply chain manager, and she works in former Leonardo factory. And actually, she's responsible for the supply chain for military solutions that Boeing is providing. And Marilena is also leading our Boeing Women Network group for Europe. So, fantastic career also as she was first a supply chain analyst and then became a manager. So I think also an interesting aspect working with all the supply groups. I think in services, we're not so used to working with supply chains, but when it comes to production all over the world, such roles are really in high demand as well. So just wanted to share that. Then we have Beata Wyszak from Poland. And Beata is our lead systems engineer in avionics. So basically, when it comes to creating flight management sort of systems for our aircrafts, Beata is actually leading those efforts in Boeing. And I think it's also a very rare example of such career to be represented by. So that's why I'm also super honored to be working with Beata in one company. Thunt Hui, we work together also in Boeing Network, and she's a quality engineer, super interested and engaged in all quality control processes all across Boeing. She works in Bristol, and actually I met with Thunt last year, and I was given a class, and she was one of the students, and right now she serves as a sort of mentor to me in various aspects. So it's interesting how sometimes such encounter enable you to work across different business units effectively. So a fantastic person, fantastic career. And I don't have the picture of Joanna, but she's also one of the aviation experts that I keep touch with, and also she, I have to say, amazed me with her career. So I just put her sort of a snapshot of her curriculum. So she's author for airline operations. She audited us 2 years ago. She works for Qantas, and actually she's responsible for all aspects of operations when it comes to quality. Equipment on board. Hello.
Can you hear me well?
Yeah, I can hear you well.
Yeah, sorry. I think we lost you when you were speaking about Joanna. Could you give 2 more words again about her? Thank you.
Sure. Can you hear me now? Okay. Hello.
It seems that there is some internet disruptions.
All right. Let's see if I can switch the internet provider maybe for a second here. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. I just switched from Wi-Fi to LTE. Maybe it's gonna be better. Thank you so much. All right. So Johanna, working for Qantas, she's airline safety operations specialist. She's an auditor, and she would really look after everything that happens during the cruise on board of the aircraft, and she would notice, anything that could endanger safety on board, or pre-flight or post-flight, including, let's say, you know, anything that could throw out of a luggage bucket in the aircraft, or like behaviors that could lead to something that just endangers the operation of an airline, things like this. And she was, you know, telling us about her job, and I was thinking that she's like all ears and eyes, and she's just an observer, just giving recommendations what could be improved on each flight that, in this particular case, Qantas offers. So I would think that when you look at the choice, at the selection of these jobs, none of them look very cliche. And I would find more. I would love to have more slides about these ladies. I just wanted to make sure we follow some GDPR rules here. I don't disclose too much. But it's just amazing how many roles there are in aviation, how many of the important ones are actually occupied by women. So I just wanted to give you this brief overview of what the ladies are doing. And we also have something very cool in our department in Global Navigation Services. And actually, we started a sort of school for kids when it comes to aviation. And I've mentioned that it is super important for people who intend to have careers in aviation to start their education early. So that's why we encourage even the youngest to start early. So you see Kasia and Justina here, I think being excellent examples of rare specialization, and also using their expertise from their previous occupations to actually you know, incorporate it in aviation and share it with others. So I find it super inspiring, and also things connected either with navigation systems or measuring turbulence, I think are important aspects that also as an expertise can serve as future potential career. So when I was talking about this presentation, Nazin here told me, just, you know, talk about Amelia Earhart and, like, you know, all the ladies. And I think that most of you, if you ask anybody about like the aviation history and like whoever were the women that were creating it, would think about Amelia, because I think there were several movies about her life, and that's why she's pretty famous. And of course, the whole story with her being the first woman who actually managed to fly over Atlantic solo. I think this is an important aspect, and most of you might know that she basically just disappeared on her last flight and was presumably never found, though some sort of wreckage remains was found. So yeah, she had a life. I think she was quite a character, and I think some men felt she dominated basically you know, her, like, the way she wanted to do things. So I think she's very important. But let's start from the scratch. So you all know the Wright brothers, who started the first flying experiments, but they were not the only sibling that were there. Actually, there was the Pilcher sibling here, a brother and a sister, that in 1895 already started sort of experimenting with some gliders. And basically Percy, the brother, he would create the whole structure design, but Ella would actually create, like, make tangible form of that design. And this whole structure that you can see in this picture was actually created by Ella. She would, like, sew up things together, stitch them together, and just check from the aerodynamic aspect if that thing would fly. So and it's funny because those gliders had names like animals. So there was a hawk or a bee, and they would, like, you know, give them a good try. That would also serve as a future experience and future sort of parameter reading for the Wright brothers. So hey, the Wright brothers were not the most famous. Actually, those guys also, I think, serve a good service here. And well, unfortunately, Percy, the brother, he was a little bit reckless. He took one of the gliders, and well, he collapsed from 10 meters, and unfortunately, he died. And she continued some design work, but retired from aviation. You know, after, like, from practical aspect of that, because she was shocked after her brother's death. So that's a shame, but fully understandable. So so that's another thing. And in general, about women in aviation, I can tell you that there was not a big support for women from men to like have occupation like Amelia Earhart or Ella. And one of the first pilots, French pilots, actually, Patricia Offne, she said that she was hearing all the time that women can't make a career in piloting or aircraft construction because of motherhood and domestic activities. So they would have to stay at home. But hey, when she was mentioning that they still work as air hostesses, as stewardesses, you know, nobody would have objections. They would say that's okay. And she's like, well, but whether you're a stewardess or you're a pilot, you still have to have your domestic activities and care for your children, right? So there was some sort of cliche that was created there for the convenience, of course, of some sort of services, I would say. So definitely those early roles were even in more sort of difficulty and danger to be achieved than the situation shows right now. All right, so there's a lot of famous women in aviation, and again, I've mentioned Amelia Earhart, I've mentioned Ella Pilker, but what I wanted to talk about is maybe a few examples that show some women that at some point I hope that you might have heard about. So the names are not representing here the right order for the pictures. They are here just for you to maybe remember those names. So let's start maybe with the one on the stamp. This is Marina Raskova, and she was a Russian officer, and she served during the Second World War in a sort of squadron. She was actually leading the sort of, let's call it a team of ladies that were called the Night Witches, and they would be a major threat to the German Air Force. And actually, first, when she wanted to have her own squad of around 80 females fighting the German bombers, she was not allowed to have it. And she was so desperate that it should exist. She was so confident that actually, you know, they could just kick the enemy asses, basically, that she wrote a long letter to Stalin. And then she had Stalin visiting her unit and showing what they can do. While airborne, he allowed for that special task force to be created. So actually, this was the German army that named them the Night Witches, because they had the whole unit had just amazing results when it comes to putting down the German machines. And every German Air Force member was just scared of flying whenever they heard that the unit was in operation. So war is never good, but there was a lot of talent that also decided to go and help their countries within those operations. And one other that you see here in the middle, it's Ellen Church. And Ellen Church, I always my first time when I heard about Ellen Church is that in our company we have in the US we have rooms named by famous famous pilots, and actually pilots or aviation workers, and actually Ellen Church is one of them. And Ellen Church was actually a pilot and a nurse, and she was one of the first persons that were hired for Boeing. At that time, Boeing was called Boeing Air Transport, and she was one of the first flight attendants also for the company. So it was interesting at the time. Also, the service was looking like this, and it was really special that she managed to become a pilot and stewardess, because she started getting her education at the times when there was Great Depression, 1929, and basically it was super hard to just get any job, but she was very persistent and decided that she's going to pursue her education and career and get into aviation. So basically she started as a flight instructor, and that then got into regular service. And there were special requirements for women to get into any sort of flying job at the time. They had to be unmarried in the 30s. They have to have a skill set of a nurse, and that they had to weigh under 115 pounds. So I think below 60 kilo or so. So that's interesting right now. And I chose Turi Videro as the last example, also because she looks like she could easily, I think, play in some Hollywood movies, looking at the picture. But also she's one of the founders of the Videro airline, and I think it was Basha mentioning here, or maybe I saw a note that Jeppesen, as such, was heavily and still is heavily involved with the service to Videro. And actually, Videro is also a frequent visitor to Gdansk airport. So now you know where the name comes from. I think especially they mostly fly, or they only fly turboprops as far as I'm concerned. And you'll see those turboprops in Gdansk airport. And Turi Videro, she was the first female pilot ever for Scandinavian Airlines. And actually, her father founded the company, Videro, and then handed it over to her, and she was one of the pilots in the airline. So today, you might know, this is one of the biggest domestic and sort of regional airlines in Scandinavia. Sometimes they serve services here. I think they also do some service for SAA. That's why we see them. Oh, they do fly Embraers as well. Good. But also they are famous for their pilots' expertise to land in the heavy terrain. I think Mateusz was talking a lot today about the heavy conditions in Norway. So I think you can associate it with that. And that's why also, their pilots are known as top-notch pilots in the world. So interesting to know that it's also Turi that contributed to that. And please watch out for Videro aircraft in our airport. So the question that the ladies would hear, actually not all of them, but most of them would face, the men would ask, the men working in aviation at the time would ask, where's the ceiling? The sky is open to women, right? So those women you see here, including Amelia, they they worked in the aviation sector from like 1920 something to 1970 something. And it was only in the 80s when we saw a major rise in female pilots being hired, especially for commercial aviation and for more sophisticated jobs being created. But for the time when those ladies worked and operated, I think that it is important that you have to understand that they really faced a lot of limitations and there was like no regular path for them to get into aviation as such. Excuse me. I just saw a question from you, Nazin. I would have to look it up. I can only say from the experience that I have from like working with certain individuals that when it comes to women pilots and the ones that I know, maybe not personally, but I was reading about, it really ranges from like 5 to 20 years. I don't know a pilotess that's in service longer than that. When it comes to crew, I think especially in the air hostesses business, those really range to like 30 and 40 years of service. All right, and one aspect I'm particularly interested in this one. So 1984, we have first woman in Boeing history becoming vice president. Some laughing, and she has a lot of stuff on her deck, so I don't know what kind of VP she is, engineering VP, I guess. But Edith Martin, she's no longer with the company. She retired like 15 years ago, but interesting that she became a sort of top-notch person in Boeing. And I still would say that as those stats I was telling you about, that there's only a small percentage of women that sort of belong to senior leadership in the aviation. I think it's connected with the sort of difficult dynamic environment aviation is, and with the conditions that require not standard working hours and so on. So I think that this will change, but it will take time to make sure it changes. And just to let you know what can be done to actually somehow, change things, wanted to share that in Boeing we have a group of Boeing Women Inspiring Leadership Group, and I've mentioned that it's important to look at inclusion as a solution. So I'm not gonna bore you maybe with some corporate objectives for the group, but maybe in simple words, what we are trying to do, we are trying to connect women from across Europe to understand what we're doing, like what roles we have in Boeing and how we can learn from each other. As you saw, some of the jobs I was showing you. We are also looking at engagement with senior leadership. So basically, we're trying to have such sessions similar to this one. And we're trying just to have our senior leaders understand that it's important to have women in the team. And we are also looking into some development and mentoring programs for women, so they would be aware that they can join fantastic jobs in the aviation. Excuse me. So that's what we do. Also, what we do, some hard data that we do, we check how many women are leaving the company, how many are joining, and we check for the years of service. As you mentioned, Nazin, we also check for the level of seniority of roles that women are reaching, and we are trying to coach the senior leaders about that inclusion aspect that should be in place. Basically, we're trying to talk about the importance of women being included in decisive groups, as it is proven in like various scientific papers that having women in major and important processes within your company helps you make better decisions that drive profitability and efficiency of the company. So we're trying to do all of this with our group. And just for me personally, I had no idea about fantastic jobs that are there in the company that are shared by women, and this is what this group taught me. So a huge inspiration. I think that initiatives are like this are really of value. And something about Boeing. Okay, I have to be faster with talking. That's the cliche. I was like, I heard that all the men had like presentations slightly shorter today, and I'm like, oh, I'm gonna do all the talking. Just wanted to let you know that Boeing does a lot of women, but something I find very interesting is the fact that in Korea, in South Korea, where we work, we actually have 50% of women working in engineering roles. So the biggest number of women working for Boeing, and Boeing has like 150,000 people, employees in the world. So Asia actually has the biggest number of working women in aviation and in engineering field. So that comes as a surprise when you think about the cultural cliche. So just wanted to share that with you. And we also have a lot of organizations that help the groups that are underprivileged or underrepresented. And there's a great video about Women Make Us Better on our website, and you'll have that presentation. And I have to say that actually that video is amazing, and I really encourage all of you to watch the video. It's fantastic. Nazin is like getting me a lot of questions, so I'm trying to like catch up with that. So
Sorry,
I'm not sure.
Honorata, I'll shut up now and let you talk.
No, no worries. No, it's fine. Can you still hear me, because it's showing that I'm reconnecting?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. I think I'm overloading the internet. So one important thing to understand, that aviation is also about going to space. So if sky is not the limit, we can go to space. And some of you might have seen that we had this metaphorical first all-women walk in space recently. Christina Koch and Jessica Mer just completed this walk last year, and this was really like broadcasted everywhere, all over the world when they were doing it. I like this cool picture while they are fixing the space station. So they just basically walked outside of the USS, just this US space station, and fixed a few things for an hour, and this was really like a historical milestone. But over the years, there were more women in space, and some of them came from Russia. Some of them actually came from US. You know that there was this sort of race to space, and women played a significant role in that. So what I wanted to say is that there is an importance of women in all major and most advanced areas, including aviation and space exploration. And this is all connected also to one aspect, to STEM education. And I think some of you might have heard about the concept of like creating an education path that would go into science, technology, mathematics. And basically, it's important to understand that investing in those programs enables people and enables women to also join such highly complex roles, like in aviation and in space. And this is just one of the programs that we have in our company, in Boeing, that actually is just focused on creating a program for high school members, and especially females, to get a sort of education within the domain of STEM, and hopefully also later on get an internship within the domain, to ensure that there is access to such roles in the future. So one of the things we can do is actually work early enough with women or with youngsters to get them prepared for such complexity jobs. And other things that we can do, I've mentioned our group. So basically, with STEM, we have to invest in development, push for progress on it. It's great if we can get a mentor or sponsor for women that are willing to like take on such roles, and also get engaged in a community that supports such activity. And one of them is what we're doing with Boeing Women Inspiring Leadership. But I think any kind of communities that enable common sort of education, I think it's important. I know we're like right on time, so just one last slide, and I'm gonna go quiet. So why is it important that we ensure that women have access to this aviation job market. And why is it important? It's not just about equality. It's not just because, you know, women feel undervalued, they have to be included. If we are to talk about the progress of aviation and recovery of aviation, I show you the outlook. We would still need more jobs in aviation in the next 20 years. So if we are to talk about the progress and recovery, we would need women as well. I'm sorry, guys, men, but you can't just fill in that gap. Women are also needed in there. And it has to equally be progressed for both men and women. And what we are seeing right now, because of pandemic, we are seeing that basically women are looking right now for more compromise to make sure that they can take care about their homes and about their children. So they are more likely to face higher unemployment right now. They're more likely to stay at home and to accept lower paid jobs because basically they would, care more about what's at home and not focus on their careers. So that's why, one more time, I'm going to be agitating here, but we have to still look at our companies and see how we can make space for women to get engaged, how we can be flexible to enable that, and how we can talk to our senior leaders all the time to ensure that they understand that this might be an issue and this is addressed. So job market, aviation job market will be demanding, and it will be demanding also women participation. And that's what I wanted to finally evaluate here. And hopefully I'm gonna leave a mark in your brains and you're gonna spread the word further. Thank you.
Wow, thank you, Honorata. That was a really passionate speech, and I'm really delighted of having you here. So let's check if there is any questions. Yeah, there is one question that I see. You said that women are said to be not suitable for strenuous jobs like captains or pilotesses. Are the companies providing any form of support and facilities, especially for women who are juggling a couple of roles versus men?
Yeah, I think that that's a very complex question, but I think that every company has several ways of providing more flexibility to women. And I don't know if there are I didn't get the whole question, but I understand that I have to look it up. I'm more visual when it comes to reading. But basically, when there are conditions, would there be conditions different for women so they can take on more demanding jobs? I think it comes to, of course, the company conditions that can be offered and flexible schedules that could be offered for such women. But it also comes to legislation, right? I mean, if we can have more paternal leaves, for example, introduced in more countries, then women can work more freely, and we can have that staying at home while women can take on such demanding jobs, right? Without just compromising between career and between their home life. So yeah, definitely there are some solutions from what I heard. The most popular ones are basically the flexible schedules and additional incentives for women who has to also care for their babies at home. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorata.